So we would like to welcome our first speaker for tonight, Jaquira Díaz.
Hi. Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate you all being here. I know you have a lot going on. And I also want to thank everyone, especially the staff who is working like it seems 24 hours a day. So thank you. I appreciate you all. And thank you to Leah and Gwen and Adam who made this possible and for having me here. I want to kind of echo what Vanita said last night, for making this the gay-ass faculty it is. And I am gonna also thank you to my spouse who does a lot of heavy lifting when I'm really anxious about reading, who is also gay. So I'm going to be reading from my book, Ordinary Girls, and I'm going to be reading two separate pieces. The first one is somewhat in the first half of the book, in the beginning of the book, and the second one will be from the end of the book. Two very different voices, very different topics, themes, but kind of related. And I guess all you have to know is that the first one has something to do with my parents' marriage. It's set in Puerto Rico, in El Caserío Padre Rivera, and I'm trying to get at themes of colonialism and the violence that kind of lives in our everyday lives because of this colonial project that is the Puerto Rican housing projects. And this is called La Otra. And I'm going to read an excerpt, by the way, it's not the whole thing. By the time my mother was 22, she had 3 children. She'd already been a mother for a third of her life. It was 1985. These were the days of Menudo and We Are the World. The year Macho Camacho gave a press conference in a leopard skin loincloth as Madonna's Like a Virgin blared from radios across the United States. In 1 month, the space shuttle Challenger would explode while all of America watched on television, entire classmates full of kids, everyone eager to witness the first teacher ever launched into space. In those days, Mommy teased her blonde hair like Madonna, traced her green eyes with blue eyeliner, applied several coats of black mascara, apple red lipstick, and matching nail polish. She wore skin-tight jeans and always, no matter where she was going, high heels. She dusted her chest with talcum powder after a bath, lotioned her arms and legs, perfumed her body, her hair. My mother loved lotions, perfume, makeup, clothes, shoes. But really, the truth was my mother loved and enjoyed her body. She walked around our apartment butt-ass naked. I was more used to seeing her naked body than my own. You should love your body, my mother would say. A woman's body was beautiful, no matter how big, how small, how old, how pregnant. This my mother firmly believed, and she would tell me over and over. As we got older, she would teach me and Elena about masturbation, giving us detailed instructions about how to achieve orgasm. Thanks, Mom. This, she said, was perfectly normal, nothing to be ashamed of. While my father only listened to salsa on vinyl, Héctor Lavoe and Willie Colón and Ismael Rivera, my mother was all about Madonna. My mother was Puerto Rican, but also American, she liked to remind us. Born in New York, and she loved everything American. She belted the lyrics to Holiday while shaving her legs in the shower, while making us egg salad sandwiches served with potato chips for lunch. She talked about moving us to Miami Beach, where Grandma Mercy and most of our titis lived, about making sure we learned English. On New Year's Eve, she made me wear a red and white striped dress and white patent leather shoes. It was hideous. I looked like a peppermint candy. She styled my hair in fat candy curls and said she wanted me to look like Shirley Temple. I had no idea who Shirley Temple was, but I hoped she didn't expect me to be friends with her. I wasn't trying to be friends with girls in dresses and uncomfortable shoes. I had no interest in my mother's curtains or her tubes of red lipstick or her dresses or the dolls Grandma Mercy and Titi Xiomara sent from Miami. I didn't want to be Barbie for Halloween like my mother suggested. I wanted to be a ninja with throwing stars and nunchucks and a sword. I wanted to kick the shit out of 10,000 men like Bruce Lee. I wanted to climb trees and catch frogs and play with Star Wars action figures, to fight with lightsabers and build model spaceships. I didn't have a crush on Atreyu from the Never-Ending Story like my brother said, teasing me. I wanted to be Atreyu, to ride Falkor the Luck Dragon. When I watched Conan the Destroyer, I wanted to be fierce and powerful Grace Jones, Zula, the woman warrior. I wanted her to be the one who saved the princess, to be the one the princess fell for in the end. Years later, would I think of Zula during that first kiss, that first throbbing between my legs? It would be with an older girl, the daughter of my parents' friends. We'd steal my mother's cigarettes, take them out back behind our building, and light them up. She would blow her smoke past my face, stick her tongue in my mouth, slide her hand inside my shorts. How she'd know just what to do without me having to tell her. This was everything. This butch girl, so unafraid, getting everything she wanted, and how willing I was to give it to her. Our new neighbor arrived in the middle of the night, carried her boxes from somebody's pickup into her living room, then waved goodbye as it drove away. She arrived in silence, filling the empty space of the apartment next door where nobody had ever lived as long as I could remember, hung her flower pots from hooks on the balcony. She arrived with almost nothing, just those plants and some furniture, and her daughter, Yesenia, a year older than me. The morning after, Eggy and I were outside catching lizards, holding on to them until they got away, leaving their broken off tails still wriggling between our fingers. She stepped out on her balcony, watering her plants with a plastic cup. La vecina, as we learned to call her, was nothing like Mommy. She wore no makeup, a faded floral house dress and out-of-style leather chancletas like my abuela's, her curly hair in a low ponytail. She had deep wrinkles around the corners of her eyes, although she didn't look as old as abuela. When she looked up at me and Eggy, she smiled. I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit. Every time I ran into La Vecina, she wanted to talk. She lived alone with her daughter, Yesenia, she told me. Yesenia wasn't in school yet, but she would be starting in a couple of days. Yesenia was shy. Yesenia loved to watch TV. Do you want to watch a movie with Yesenia? Do you want to jump rope with Yesenia? I hadn't seen this Yesenia yet, but I was already done with her. One morning, Mommy at work, Papi asleep on the couch, La Vecina caught me leaving our apartment. She was sweeping the front steps when I came out and called after me when I tried to sneak past her. Jackie, wait! She leaned the broom against her door and sat on the stoop, tapping the space next to her. I exhaled dramatically, then plopped down on the step. Where were you headed? She asked. Out. Is your brother at school? Yes. Is your mom at work? Yes. Is your father home? Then she asked question after question after question. When does he come home? Does he come home at night? I rolled my eyes, and at first it felt like being interrogated, but after a while I was so happy to have a grown-up listening to me talk about myself. I let it all out. I told her how Anthony and I were always fighting, how I wasn't supposed to go to La Plaza, but I still snuck over there sometimes. She listened to every word I said, really listened, even laughed when I made a joke. Then, I don't know what made me do it, but I told her about the tecato who came up to our balcony and pulled out his dick. Do you know who he was? She asked. No, but I've seen him before. Did you tell your father? No. You know, she said, if you ever need to, you can talk to me. She looked right into my eyes and waited. Okay, I said, and I believed her. I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit. Another day, La Vecina's apartment door wide open, she caught me as I was coming home from the basketball courts. Hey, Jackie, she called after me, come in and play with Yesenia. I didn't know how to say no to her, and I didn't think she'd like it if I told her that Eggy and I always avoided Yesenia when we saw her riding her bike out front. Yesenia and her Yesenia dresses, one in every color of the rainbow, and her folded down ankle socks. Yesenia with ribbons in her hair, Yesenia and her stupid pigtails. She was everything I wasn't. I had a mass of sunburned frizz that stood straight up, and I liked it that way. Whenever Mommy put ribbons in my hair, they ended up on the floor or stuffed between the couch cushions or in one of Abuela's planters. She led me into her kitchen where her only table was a child-sized plastic one with two small red chairs. Yesenia sat there, a plate of chocolate chip cookies in front of her, getting crumbs all over her purple dress. Her pigtails were perfect, each plaited into a tight, long braid and secured with a ribbon. La Vecina pulled out the other chair and set a small plate for me. Yesenia barely looked at me. I nodded, took a cookie, and instead of playing with Yesenia, I answered more questions for La Vecina. So, she finally said, what's your mother like? I studied her for a minute, not sure what she was asking. La Vecina was nothing like Mommy. My mother would never wear a dress like my abuela's, would never smell like fried plátanos and pinto, would never ask question after question before getting to the point. My mother was direct and she took no shit. She got right to it. We'd go to a party and right away she was dancing. She was small but scared of nothing, a foul-mouthed chain smoker with a hot temper who drove a stick-shift Mazda RX-7, who never set foot outside without makeup, without her door knocker earrings or her heels. As petite as she was, my mother owned every room she walked into. She eclipsed the sun with her confidence, took the world by the throat and shook it until it gave up what was hers. You crossed her and she was ready to throw down on the spot, taking off earrings and heels and tying up her hair. She was curvy with a swing in her hips, and everywhere we went, she had admirers, leering men asking her name, asking for her phone number, calling after her, "Mira, mami." But she didn't give any of them the time of day. My mother was utterly and completely in love with my father. Hers was the blazing, frenzied love of Puerto Rican novelas, the kind of love that drives you mad. She loved her children, the three of us, even more so, and she never let us forget it. I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit. Hours later, after Abuela was already gone, Anthony watching TV and Elena in her crib, Mommy walked through the door, tired from work. She sat at the kitchen table, rubbing her feet. "Did you eat?" she asked. "I'll make you something." "I already ate. Had some of La Vecina's arroz con pollo." "La Vecina?" my mother asked. "She sent a big platter of food for Papi." Suddenly, my mother got up, slamming her fist on the table, shut her eyes, brought her hands to her face, then she stomped out of the kitchen. My father denied everything. He followed my mother as she came back to the kitchen. "It's not true, Jeanette," he said. "I don't know what she's talking about." My mother opened the refrigerator, opened the freezer, the oven, lifted the lid to our trash can. She inspected the dishes in the sink, opened and closed all the cabinets, searching and searching. She came over and took me by the arm. "Show me," she asked. "Where is it?" I looked for La Vecina's platter everywhere, opening cabinets and checking the fridge again, but nothing. I don't know, I said, tears starting to sting my eyes. I'm telling you, my father said, it never happened. I looked to my father, trying to understand, trying to look in his eyes, but there was nothing there that could clear things up. I burst into tears. Mommy looked back and forth from Papi to me, then Papi again. She finally turned back to me, leaning down till her face met mine. Are you lying? She asked me. I couldn't get any words out. My mother was mad as hell, standing there, breathing hard, the stink of her cigarette on my face. It never happened, Papi said again. My mother did not move, did not say a word. She was waiting for me to break. I kept crying, looking at my father for answers. He looked at my mother, beads of sweat collecting at his temple, but he would not look at me. I don't know what she's talking about, my father said, looking down at his feet, at the floor, at the wall, at the stove, unable to meet my eyes, and then finally, I understood. Skipping ahead a little bit. Days later, me and Eggy walking back from Abuela's house where we'd polished off half a dozen mangoes by ourselves, our faces and forearms sticky with juice and pulp, we ran into a mob of people outside my building. Eggy's mom and his brothers, the guy who sold pinchos around the corner from the front gate, a bunch of street kids, some viejas who lived a couple buildings over, everybody rowdy, hollering, shoving each other. I spotted Pito and Anthony and lost Eggy as I pushed through the crowd to get to them. What's going on? I asked. Pito pointed toward the middle of the group, his face sweaty and red. He elbowed one of the other kids out of the way and pulled me by the arm, trying to squeeze us both through the small space. Your mom, he yelled. Somebody rammed me right into Pito. I almost fell, but kept moving, struggling through the throng of people, bumping them with my shoulders. Behind me, Anthony shoved me, yelling at the back of my head, move! I'm trying, I hollered back. When a space opened up, Pito thrust us through it until we made it to the front, and I saw them. Papi had Mommy in his arms, trying to hold her back. Mommy was kicking and slapping at him, trying to get free, her hair windblown and tangled. Our upstairs neighbor, a 6'6" basketball player everybody called Gigante, was holding La Vecina, her curly hair pulled out of its ponytail and torn to shreds. La Vecina swung both arms blindly, aiming for anything she could hit. As Papi tried to carry Mommy toward her front door, she slid down and got loose, and all the street kids exploded, Pito and Anthony and Eggy calling out, light her up, knock her out, prendela. It was the same kind of shouting we heard in our living room during boxing matches, my father and his friends knocking back medallas in front of the TV, everybody jumping to their feet when Macho Camacho started wailing on Jose Luis Ramirez, hollering, knock him out, light him up, prendelo. My mother tangled her hands in La Vecina's hair, pulled her down out of Gigante's arms and onto the ground, and started kicking. My father got a hold of Mommy again, picked her up in the air, my mother red-faced and shrieking, spit flying out of her mouth. He carried her inside. Gigante helped La Vecina get up. She had 3 long, bloody scratches over her nose and mouth like claw marks. Just then, as La Vecina was getting to her feet, Mommy burst through the front door, a steak knife in her hand. The crowd moved back, opening up more space between themselves and my mother, and everything seemed to slow down. Pito and Anthony and Eggy, all of them disappearing until it was just me and my mother's knife, the 3 of us echoing through the years, propelled forward in time. And because I am my mother's daughter more than I have ever been my father's, it will be this moment I think of when I'm a 14-year-old hoodlum tucking razor blades into the sides of my Jordans, brass knuckles and master combination like locks and pocket knives in my backpack. when I am 15 and getting jumped by 5 girls at the bus stop, when I am 16 and trying to decide how to deal with a friend who has betrayed me, when I am 17 and fighting with my brother, how I would always come back to this, my mother and her knife and all that rage, La Vecina leaping back out of her way, and then my father's face, my father's hand, my father's voice. Jeanette let go of the knife, how he took both of her hands into his, saying it over and over, suelta el cuchillo, suelta el cuchillo, suelta el cuchillo. But my mother would not let it go. Instead, Papi lifted her hands above her head, trying to pry it from her fingers, and Mommy bit his shoulder, kicked him. He leaned her up against the doorway, pressing his body against hers until she couldn't move, subduing her, and when he was finally able to get the knife, some of the onlookers rushed to help. It took 3 grown men to get Mommy kicking and slapping and hurling insults at them back inside her apartment. Outside, as the crowd split, while La Vecina was still fixing her hair and clothes, limping around looking for her chancletas, I saw Yesenia. She saw me too, standing on the front lawn, outside the crowd's perimeter, Yesenia in one of her Yesenia dresses, a white one with big yellow flowers, her hair parted down the middle, braided. How she stood there, alone, her face stained with tears, how nobody else seemed to see her, how nobody stopped as they headed back to their apartments or the basketball courts or La Plaza, how nobody asked if she was okay, if she needed help, anything. I'd like to say that when I saw her, Yesenia looking back at me, yellow ribbons in her hair, that we had a moment. That as we looked into each other's eyes, we both understood that we had been lost, that we were lucky to find each other in a crowd. And we both thought, here is a girl who sees me. Here is a girl who understands. The truth is, we did have a moment, Yesenia and I, seeing each other, knowing each other, and it was clear we were the same. I hated her, and she hated me. Because we were our mother's daughters, because we could not turn back time to the days when our mothers were just girls, or forward when we would finally break free of them, because back then we could not see what either of us would become. I'm gonna drink some water. Thank you all. Thank you. The second piece is much, much shorter, and it is about, not really about, but it's about Lolita Lebrón, and I just want to bring her into this space. One of the projects I took on while writing this book was to write about a kind of history that's been erased or not accessible about colonialism in Puerto Rico and people who fought for its liberation. Puerto Rico is still a US colony today. And so part of what I decided to write about was Lolita Lebrón, who was a controversial figure because she decided that in her fight for liberation, she was gonna take up arms against the US. And she did, and she decided to go to Capitol Hill and shoot the representatives, to shoot her gun in Capitol Hill as a way of protesting. And because of this, she's very controversial, but also part of what she said in her many, many interviews, and when she was caught, was that she didn't go there to kill people, that she went to die, and to die for Puerto Rico. And when I was in college, in 2004, they wrote a profile on her in the Washington Post, and it kind of infuriated me that I knew so much about Lolita, but that the profile, the title of the profile, it was called When Terror Wore Lipstick. And yeah. And so it was infuriating at the time, but it also gave me insight into how people saw us, Puerto Ricans, but especially Puerto Rican women. No matter how controversial and how political, like the headline was about her lipstick, and so that was kind of infuriating. And so part of my project was to kind of think about everything I'd learned, things that were in the archive, and kind of recreate that moment as a kind of, to talk about who she was as a political figure, but also to kind of get into her head and talk about write about what she was thinking, or what that moment might have looked like. And so I took some liberties. And this is a very short section. Capitol Hill, 1954. After her incarceration, Lolita spoke of visions. In prison, she said she'd heard the voice of God himself. Visited by angels, Jesucristo, La Virgen Maria in her prison cell, God had given her a divine mission. I imagine that long after being convicted and sentenced to 56 years in federal prison, the day of the shooting had become to her like something willed by God. The train ride from New York to Washington, D.C., Lolita sitting by the window, watching the countryside, surrendering herself to the idea of dying in the name of freedom. How she met Rafael Cancel Miranda, Irving Flores, and Andres Figueroa Cordero, the three men who would follow her into the House of Representatives, up to what they called the Ladies' Gallery. How after a meal at Union Station, running late, the four of them got lost. How they wandered the streets, strangers in this foreign place, this city so far from home, until finally they asked for directions. How when it started raining on the steps of the United States Capitol, Rafael pointed to the time on his watch, asked Lolita to wait. How she ignored the time, the rain, the three nervous men, everything testing her resolve. How she saw the hesitation, the fear in each of their faces and thought, I am alone. How she had decided back on that train that she would sacrifice her life for her island, and then she said it, yo estoy sola, leaving the three men behind to follow or turn back. She had come here to die. Lolita standing in front of that government building, one woman among all those men, how she'd been living in a country that didn't feel hers, how she remembered the European settlers that raped and enslaved and killed the Taino who didn't deliver tributes of gold and spun cotton, hands hacked off, bodies left by the riverbanks. The European slave traders who stole and enslaved and raped and murdered African people, carried them chained across continents. Puerto Rico seized, exploited, first by Spanish colonizers, then by Americans who conferred citizenship to Puerto Ricans only so they could be drafted into military service during World War I, but didn't allow us the same voting rights as other US citizens. The Puerto Rican women sterilized by the American government without their consent. Pueblos that turned to ghost towns, all the schools closing because there were no more children. Boriquen, Boriquen, Borinquen, Puerto Rico, our history, our culture, our blackness, our names, our people stolen. Erased. Had Lolita heard the stories? Had she read them in her father's books before she became a freedom fighter? Did she carry them with her? Lolita climbing the stairs to the ladies' gallery, cocking her Luger pistol. Boriquen, Boriquen, Borinquen, Puerto Rico, Viva Puerto Rico Libre, all those people on the streets of Ponce singing along as the band played La Borinqueña, the priest's sermon still fresh in their minds from that morning's Catholic Mass, the word of God, the palm fronds in their hands, their faces as that first shot rang out, Tommy guns blasting, the earth opening up like a wound. Yo estoy sola, she said, but what she really meant was, I am a woman. Thank you so much.